For 2 decades, my father labeled me an error, always preferring my brother. One Thanksgiving, he presented a DNA kit to me as a joke. Let's find out if you're truly mine. I underwent the test. Weeks passed, then the findings arrived. I forwarded them to our entire family. My mother fainted. My father's fork clattered because the DNA proved I was his sole biological child. Can you imagine being told your entire life that you're a mistake, that you don't belong, only for your own father to hand you a DNA test on Thanksgiving, demanding you prove you're his daughter? What if that twisted, public insult actually became the key to unraveling a 35-year family secret and ultimately destroying his entire legacy? Because that's exactly what happened to me. My name is Caroline Mitchell. I'm 38, and for 2 decades, my father treated me like a stranger. Then, on Thanksgiving 2024, in front of 27 stunned relatives, he gave me that DNA kit. His words still haunt me, "Prove you're even my daughter." The room went dead silent. My mom dropped her wine glass. My brother Marcus, he just laughed. They all thought it was Dad's cruelest joke yet, another way to remind me I didn't belong. But what none of them knew was that this test would expose a secret buried for 35 years and cost my father absolutely everything he'd built. This is how his ultimate insult became his ultimate downfall. Growing up as a Mitchell meant knowing your place from day one. My father, Robert Mitchell, built his construction company from nothing into a $45 million empire, and, trust me, he never let anyone forget it. Mitchell and Associates? That was his true firstborn, his real legacy. I was just the daughter who arrived 3 years before his real child, my brother Marcus. The favoritism wasn't subtle. On my 16th birthday, I got a used SAT prep book with a note that read, "Maybe this will help you amount to something." Marcus? That same year, he got a brand new BMW just for getting his driver's license. When I graduated summa cum laude with a computer science degree from UConn, Dad's response was a shrug. "Well, at least you'll be employable." But when Marcus scraped by with a C-grade marketing degree from a state school, Robert threw a party for 200 people and announced him as the future of Mitchell and Associates. By 2024, I'd spent 15 years as a software engineer at a Fortune 500 company, developing systems that saved millions in operational costs. Marcus? He'd been VP of operations at Dad's company for 5 years, despite never successfully completing a single project without someone else stepping in to fix his mess. But in Robert's eyes, Marcus was building the family legacy. I was just there. "Marcus is the future of Mitchell and Associates," my father would declare at every company event, his hand resting proudly on my brother's shoulder. As for Caroline, well, at least she has a steady job. The worst part wasn't the dismissal. It was how everyone just accepted it. Relatives, family, friends, even my mother. They all played along, perpetuating this narrative that Marcus was destined for greatness, and I was lucky to even be included. The company retreat in August 2023 should have been my breaking point. I just finished developing an inventory management system that would save Mitchell and Associates $2 million annually. I'd worked nights and weekends for 3 months, missing family dinners, canceling plans, all because Robert said the company needed this. At the gala dinner, Robert stood before 150 employees and partners, ready to make his announcements. "First, I want to recognize the exceptional work done on our new inventory system," he began, and my heart actually lifted for a fleeting second. "Marcus has once again proven why he's our vice president of operations. This system will revolutionize how we work." Marcus, who had literally asked me what inventory management meant 3 weeks prior, stood there, waving to the applause. I sat frozen. My mother, Margaret, was beside me. Her hand briefly touched mine under the table, not in comfort, but in warning. "Stay quiet. Don't make a scene." Later that night, I confronted Marcus in the hotel bar. "You know I built that entire system," I said, my voice tight. He just shrugged, taking a long sip of his top-shelf whiskey, charged to the company card, of course. "Dad says leadership is about delegation. I delegated to you. That's what good executives do. You took credit for my work." "I took credit for managing you well," he corrected, that Mitchell smirk, identical to our father's, playing on his lips. Besides, you're not really built for the spotlight, are you? Some people are meant to be leaders. Others are meant to be reliable. My mother appeared then, as she always did when tension arose. But instead of defending me, she just looked at me with that same expression I'd seen 1,000 times, something between pity and guilt. "Let's not ruin a lovely evening," she said softly, though her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her wine glass. October 2024 brought the news that would ultimately seal everyone's fate. Robert had summoned Marcus to a meeting with James Morrison, the family's estate attorney for 20 years. Marcus, who could never keep his mouth shut when he had good news, called me immediately after. "Guess who's about to be very, very wealthy?" he sang into the phone. "Dad just updated his will. 85% of everything, the company, the properties, the investments, all going to his sole biological son." That's literally what it says, Caroline. Sole biological son. "The remaining 15% goes to you," he continued, "but here's the kicker. You can't sell your shares for 10 years. He wants to make sure you can't cash out and abandon the family legacy." That's specific wording I managed, my mind catching on the phrase biological son. Morrison suggested it, Marcus went on, oblivious to my tone. Something about making the will ironclad, preventing challenges from gold diggers or distant relatives. Dad loved it. Said blood is what matters in the end. That evening, I received an email from Morrison Law Firm, a courtesy copy of the will's key provisions. There it was, in black and white, 85% of all assets, shares, and controlling interest in Mitchell and Associates shall transfer to my sole biological son, Marcus Mitchell. $38 million. That's what Marcus stood to inherit. My 15% would be worth about $7 million, nothing to scoff at. But with the 10-year restriction, I'd be forced to watch Marcus run the company into the ground, powerless to sell my shares. But something about that phrase kept nagging at me. Sole biological son. Why not just say my son Marcus? Why the emphasis on biological? November arrived with a board meeting that felt more like a coronation. Robert had invited me to attend, not as a participant, but as what he called family support. I sat in the corner while he presented Marcus as his succession plan to 7 board members who controlled various stakes in Mitchell and Associates. "Marcus has been instrumental in our recent technological advances," Robert announced, gesturing to a projection showing my inventory systems metrics. "Under his leadership, we've saved $2 million this quarter alone." Board member Patricia Hayes, who'd known me since I was 10, glanced my way with raised eyebrows. She knew exactly who had built that system. I'd answered her technical questions about it just 2 weeks prior. But she said nothing. "I propose we officially designate Marcus as CEO-elect to take over when I step down next year," Robert continued. The vote was unanimous. After the meeting, I overheard 2 junior executives in the break room. "Did you hear? Once Marcus takes over, he's planning a full restructuring. Apparently, anyone who's not his people should start updating their resumes." "What about Caroline?" the other asked. "Especially Caroline. Marcus told Brad she's been riding on family connections for too long. Says it's time for merit-based employment." I almost laughed at the irony. Marcus, who couldn't code a simple HTML page, talking about merit-based employment. That night, my mother called. "Thanksgiving is in 2 weeks," she said, her voice strangely flat. "Your father wants everyone there. The whole family, some business partners. He says he has something special planned." "Special? Like Marcus's CEO announcement special?" There was a long pause. "Just be prepared for anything, Caroline. And maybe don't take everything so personally." But everything was about to become very, very personal. If you've ever experienced blatant favoritism in your family, Thanksgiving at the Mitchell estate in Greenwich was always a performance. But this year felt different. 27 people gathered in a dining room that could have been featured in Architectural Digest. Family members, Robert's business partners, even Thomas Crawford, his former CFO, who'd been mysteriously fired back in 1990, but somehow remained in Robert's social circle. Robert stood at the head of the table, crystal glass raised, his face glowing with pride. "Before we feast, I want to make a toast. To family." To blood. To legacy. His eyes found Marcus. To my real son, who carries the Mitchell name forward with honor. Everyone raised their glasses. I raised mine too, the words real son echoing in my ears. Then came the gifts. Robert had decided to make Thanksgiving special by giving out early Christmas presents. Marcus received a Rolex Submariner for the future CEO. Robert announced. My cousins got various expensive gadgets. Then Robert reached me, holding a small box with a red bow. The room quieted. And for Caroline, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, something I think we've all been curious about for years. I opened the box. Inside was an ancestry DNA kit. The room went silent. Someone gasped. My mother's wine glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. Robert's smile was razor-sharp. Just to put all those family jokes to rest. Let's see if you're really mine, shall we? I mean, you've never quite fit in, have you? Maybe this will explain why. 27 pairs of eyes watched me. Marcus was actually laughing. Oh, come on, Caroline. It's just a joke. Unless you're worried about something. I looked at the kit, then at Robert, then at my mother, who was frantically trying to clean up the wine with shaking hands. You want me to take this test? I asked calmly. If you're really a Mitchell, you've got nothing to hide, he sneered. I stood up slowly, the DNA kit in my hands. The room held its breath. I'll take your test, I said, my voice carrying across the silent dining room. On one condition. Robert's smirk widened. You're hardly in a position to make conditions. It's only fair that Marcus takes one, too, I continued, turning to my brother. After all, if we're verifying bloodlines for the family records, shouldn't we be thorough? Marcus's laughter cut off abruptly. That's ridiculous. Everyone knows I'm Dad's son. I look just like him. Then you have nothing to worry about. I echoed his earlier words back to him. Unless you're worried about something? The room buzzed with whispers. Some of the business partners looked uncomfortable, but others seemed intrigued by the drama unfolding. Robert's jaw tightened. This is unnecessary. Marcus doesn't need to prove anything. But I do. I asked, challenging him right there in front of everyone. Either we both take the test, or I walk out right now and you can explain to everyone why your joke only applies to one child. Thomas Crawford spoke up from his seat near the window. Seems fair to me, Robert. What's good for one should be good for both. My mother had gone completely pale, her hands gripping the edge of the table. This isn't necessary. It's Thanksgiving. We should be grateful for family. Not this. Robert looked between us, calculating. His reputation was on the line now. Backing down would make him look weak. Fine, he said finally. Marcus will take the test too. To prove what we all already know. Marcus shrugged, his confidence returning. Whatever. This is stupid, but fine. I held up the kit. One more thing. The results get announced at the company gala next month. Publicly. Since you wanted to make this public, let's go all the way. The next morning, we gathered in Robert's home office. He'd ordered 2 more DNA kits overnight, not from Ancestry DNA, but from Gene Tech Labs, a medical-grade testing facility that provided legal documentation. If we're doing this, we're doing it right, Robert declared, as if the whole thing had been his idea. No room for doubt or error. James Morrison was present as a witness, along with Patricia Hayes from the board, who Robert had called to ensure transparency. I also insisted on recording the entire process on my phone, which Robert allowed with an eye roll. We each swabbed our cheeks according to the instructions, sealed our samples, and signed the chain of custody forms. Morrison notarized everything. The results take 3 to 4 weeks, the Gene Tech instructions stated. Legal documentation will be provided with all results. Perfect timing, Robert said. The company gala is December 15th. We'll have the results by then. As I placed my sample in the prepaid shipping box, Marcus leaned over. You realize you're just embarrassing yourself more, right? When these come back, everyone will know Dad was right about you all along. Maybe, I said, sealing the box. Or maybe everyone will finally know the truth. My mother, who had been silent throughout the process, suddenly spoke. I need to lie down. I'm not feeling well. She left the room quickly, but not before I caught her expression in the mirror by the door. pure terror. That evening, she started taking anxiety medication. I know because I saw the prescription bottle on her bathroom counter when I stopped by to check on her. The prescription was dated that day, November 29, 2024. Something was about to surface that had been buried for 35 years, and my mother knew exactly what it was. 3 days after we sent the tests, my mother showed up at my apartment unannounced. She'd never done that in the 5 years I'd lived there. "We need to talk," she said, pushing past me into the living room. "About the tests. You need to call the lab and cancel them." "Why would I do that?" She paced my small living room, wringing her hands. "Some things are better left buried, Caroline. Some truths don't help anyone. Like the truth about why Dad has treated me like garbage for 20 years. She stopped pacing and looked at me with those guilty eyes I'd seen so many times. "Your father was on a business trip in 1989. The Peterson Project in Chicago. He was gone for 3 months. Marcus was born in January 1990. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Do the math." "Caroline." I did. "Marcus would have been conceived in April 1989. Dad was in Chicago." "Yes," she sank onto my couch. "But Thomas Crawford wasn't." Thomas Crawford. Robert's former CFO. The man who'd been at Thanksgiving dinner. The man who'd supported my suggestion that Marcus also take the test. "You and Crawford?" She pulled an old photograph from her purse. Her and Crawford at some company function, standing closer than colleagues should. It only happened once. I was lonely. Robert was always gone or at the office. Thomas was kind to me. But then I found out I was pregnant. And the timing. Robert never questioned it. Marcus looked enough like him, acted like him. Does Crawford know? I don't know. Maybe he suspects. He's never said anything. She grabbed my hands. "Please, Caroline, cancel the tests. I'll talk to your father. Make him treat you better. Just please, don't destroy our family." I didn't cancel the tests. How could I? 20 years of being called a mistake, and now I knew why my mother had never defended me. Her guilt had kept her silent, while Robert destroyed my self-worth day by day. December arrived with preparations for the company's 25th anniversary gala in full swing. The event would be held at the Ritz-Carlton Ballroom on December 15th. 350 guests, including investors, partners, and journalists from the Hartford Business Journal. Robert had been broadcasting his plans to anyone who'd listen. "It's going to be the event of the year," he told me during a mandatory family dinner. "I'll be announcing Marcus as my official successor, and we'll put those silly DNA questions to rest once and for all." 2 birds, 1 stone. The DNA results were due December 14th. Dr. Sarah Smith from Gene Tech Labs had confirmed via email that the results would be ready and would include full legal documentation, suitable for court proceedings if needed. "Why court proceedings?" I'd asked during our phone call. "It's standard for inheritance or custody disputes," she explained. "Your father specifically requested the legal package when he called to upgrade the testing." Of course he had. Robert wanted ironclad proof that I wasn't his, probably to justify writing me out of the will entirely. I spent those weeks preparing something of my own, a simple PowerPoint presentation. Just 10 slides, nothing fancy, just spaces for test results, some highlighted sections of the will, and a few email screenshots. I saved it on a USB drive that I kept in my pocket at all times. My mother called 17 times in those 2 weeks. I didn't answer once. Marcus sent cocky texts about practicing his CEO speech. Robert sent a reminder to dress appropriately for the gala. The storm was coming, and they had no idea they'd created it themselves. December 14th, 3 p.m. The email from Gene Tech Labs arrived while I was in my office, supposedly working, but really just staring at my inbox, refreshing every 30 seconds. Subject: DNA test results. Legal documentation package attached. My hands shook as I opened the PDF. 3 test results, each with its own detailed breakdown. Caroline Mitchell, biological daughter of Robert Mitchell. Probability of paternity, 99.987%. My heart stopped. Then I scrolled to the next page. Marcus Mitchell, not biologically related to Robert Mitchell. Probability of paternity, 0%. But it was the 3rd page that made me gasp out loud. Marcus Mitchell, biological son of Thomas Crawford. Probability of paternity, 99.991%. They'd run Marcus's sample against Crawford's DNA from their commercial database. Apparently, Crawford had taken a gene ancestry test years ago, and when you agree to their terms, they can use your DNA for family matching services. I read the results 5 times. Not because I didn't believe them, but because suddenly, everything made sense. The guilt in my mother's eyes. Robert's insistence that I wasn't really his. He'd been projecting his subconscious doubts about Marcus onto me for 2 decades. The irony was so perfect it felt like fiction. The son he'd worshipped, groomed, handed everything to on a silver platter wasn't even his. While the daughter he tortured, dismissed, and tried to humiliate with a DNA test. I was his only biological child. I forwarded the results to my personal attorney with one question. Given the will's language about sole biological son, what happens to the inheritance? Her response was immediate. If proven accurate, Marcus inherits nothing. The clause becomes void. As the only biological child, you would have grounds to contest the entire will. Tomorrow's gala was about to become very, very interesting. I spent the rest of December 14th crafting my presentation with surgical precision. 10 slides that would dismantle 20 years of lies in 10 minutes. Slide 1. A photo of our family at last year's company gala. Robert's arm around Marcus. Me, standing to the side, barely in frame. Slide 2. The title, DNA Results, as requested by Robert Mitchell. Slides 3 to 5. My results, blown up large enough for the back of the ballroom to read. Each percentage highlighted, the Gene Tech Lab's logo prominent, Dr. Smith's certification signature clear. Slides 6 to 8. Marcus's results. The 0% probability of Robert's paternity in 72-point font. Then, the Crawford match, equally enlarged. Slide 9. The will's exact language, with sole biological son highlighted in yellow. Slide 10. An email from James Morrison, sent an hour ago after I'd forwarded him the results. Based on these certified results, the inheritance clause regarding Marcus Mitchell would be legally void. The estate would need to be redistributed according to intestate succession laws, or the will would need to be rewritten. I also prepared backup documentation, the full Gene Tech report, the video of our sample collection, the notarized chain of custody forms, everything loaded onto 3 separate USB drives, plus backed up to the cloud. At 11 p.m., I sent an email to Patricia Hayes and 3 other board members. Please attend tomorrow's gala. There will be an important announcement regarding the company's future leadership that directly affects shareholder interests. Then I turned off my phone, poured myself a glass of wine, and practiced my speech one more time. This isn't about revenge, I said to my reflection. This is about truth. This is about justice. This is about finally getting what I deserve. Tomorrow, the Mitchell dynasty would crumble, and I would be the only Mitchell left standing. December 14th, midnight. My phone, which I'd turned back on briefly, showed 17 missed calls from my mother, 5 from Marcus, and none from Robert. There were also text messages. Mom, Caroline, please answer. We need to talk. Mom, I know you got the results. Please. Mom, don't do this. Marcus, why is Mom crying? Marcus, she won't tell me what's wrong. Marcus, this is about tomorrow, isn't it? Marcus, whatever you're planning, it won't work. Marcus, Dad says you're just jealous. Pathetic. I turned the phone off again and went to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. I kept thinking about all the moments that led to this. Every dismissive comment, every stolen achievement, every time I'd been told I wasn't good enough, wasn't really family, wasn't worthy of the Mitchell name. At 3 a.m., I got up and looked at the presentation one more time. For a moment, just a moment, I considered my mother's plea. This would destroy her marriage, Marcus's entire identity, Robert's carefully constructed legacy. Then I remembered last year's Christmas, when Robert had given Marcus a Patek Philippe watch and me a gift card to Target. I remembered him telling investors I was just the IT help when I'd saved his company $2 million. I remembered 20 years of being called a mistake. I added one final slide to the presentation. A quote, "The truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off." Outside, snow began to fall, covering Greenwich in a blanket of white. By tomorrow night, everything would be different. The Mitchell family as we knew it would no longer exist. I finally fell asleep at 5 a.m., clutching the USB drive like a talisman, ready for the reckoning that had been 20 years in the making. The Ritz-Carlton ballroom glittered with Christmas decorations and the who's who of Connecticut's construction industry. 350 guests mingled over champagne and caviar, celebrating Mitchell and Associates' 25 years of success. I arrived in a black cocktail dress, appropriate but understated, exactly as Robert would expect. He'd seated me at table 12 in the back corner, with distant relatives and plus ones. Marcus, of course, held court at the VIP table with Robert, my mother, and the board members. Robert took the stage at 8 p.m. sharp, commanding attention in his custom tuxedo. 25 years ago, I started this company with nothing but ambition and the determination to build a legacy. Tonight, I'm proud to announce that legacy will continue through my son, Marcus Mitchell. Applause filled the room. Marcus stood, waving like a politician, his smile broad and confident. "Family," Robert continued, "is everything. Blood is thicker than water. And Marcus is my blood, my heir, my future." I noticed Thomas Crawford sitting at table 3, his expression unreadable as he watched Robert's performance. Before I officially announce Marcus as CEO-elect, I want to address something. Robert's eyes found me in the back. As many of you know, we recently did some family DNA testing. A little Thanksgiving fun that got out of hand, but I'm happy to report that all questions about our family tree have been answered. My hand moved to the USB drive in my purse. So, without further ado, I stood up, my voice carrying across the ballroom. I'd like to share those DNA results with everyone. Since you brought it up publicly at Thanksgiving, it's only fair we resolve it publicly here. The room turned to stare. Robert's smile flickered but held. "I'm sure that's not necessary, Caroline." I walked through the ballroom, past 25 tables of stunned guests, my heels clicking against the marble floor. Each step felt like a mile, but I kept my shoulders back, my head high. "May I?" I gestured to the laptop connected to the massive LED screens flanking the stage. Robert's jaw tightened. "Caroline, this is neither the time nor. You made it the time when you gave me that DNA kit in front of everyone," I said, loud enough for the entire room to hear. "You wanted answers. I have them." Marcus laughed from his table. "This is desperate, even for you." Patricia Hayes spoke up from the board table. "Let her speak, Robert. You did make this public at Thanksgiving." Several of us were there. Trapped by his own arrogance, Robert stepped aside. "5 minutes, then security will escort you out." I plugged in my USB drive, my hands steady despite my racing heart. The first slide appeared on the screens. Our family photo. "For 20 years," I began, "I've been told I'm not really a Mitchell, that I'm a mistake, that I don't belong." I clicked to the next slide, DNA results, as requested by Robert Mitchell. "So, let's see who really belongs in this family." The room was silent, except for the hum of the projector. "Remember that DNA kit you gave me as a joke?" I looked directly at Robert. "Remember insisting Marcus take one too, to prove he's your real son?" My mother stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Caroline, please, the results came in yesterday," I continued, clicking to slide 3. The screen displayed my results. Probability of paternity, 99.987%. Turns out, I am definitely Robert Mitchell's biological daughter. "But that's not the interesting part," I said, clicking to the next slide. Marcus's results filled the screens. The 0% probability of Robert's paternity might as well have been written in fire. The ballroom erupted, gasps, whispers, chairs scraping as people stood for a better view. Robert stood frozen at the side of the stage, his face draining of color. "That's fake," Marcus shouted, jumping to his feet. "This is fabricated. She's lying." I clicked to the next slide. Marcus's match with Thomas Crawford, 99.991%. Thomas Crawford slowly stood from his seat, his face a mask of shock and something else. Recognition, perhaps. The pieces finally falling into place after 35 years. My mother collapsed back into her chair, her hand over her mouth. She didn't faint, as I'd expected. She just sat there, tears streaming down her face. The secret she'd carried for so long, finally exposed. According to the will Robert signed in October, I clicked to the next slide, showing the highlighted text, 85% of everything goes to his sole biological son. The final slide appeared, Morrison's email confirmation. But Robert doesn't have a biological son. He has a biological daughter. Me. The mistake. The disappointment. The one who never belonged. Robert finally found his voice. This can't be. The lab made an error. Gene Tech Labs doesn't make errors. Dr. Sarah Smith stood from table 7. I hadn't known she'd be here, but Patricia Hayes had apparently invited her. I supervised these tests personally. I ran them 3 times to be certain. The results are accurate. We maintained strict chain of custody, which was witnessed and notarized by Mr. James Morrison. Morrison stood, reluctantly. The sample collection was properly witnessed and documented. I have the video evidence and signed forms. Furthermore, Dr. Smith continued, Mr. Crawford's DNA was already in our database from a test he took 3 years ago. The match with Marcus Mitchell was discovered through our standard relative matching protocol. The Hartford Business Journal photographer was frantically taking pictures. Board members huddled in heated discussion. And Marcus? Marcus looked like his entire world had just imploded. Because it had. This is a setup. Marcus shouted, pushing through the crowd toward the stage. She paid someone off. This isn't real. Dr. Smith walked to the microphone with calm authority. I'm Dr. Sarah Smith, Director of Genetic Services at Gene Tech Labs. I stake my professional reputation on these results. Patricia Hayes stood at the board table. Robert, given this information, we need to convene an emergency board meeting tonight. You can't do this. Robert's composure finally cracked completely. This company is mine. Marcus is my son. I raised him. You raised him, I agreed, still at the microphone. But he's not your biological son. And according to your own will, that's all that matters. Your words, not mine. I pulled out my phone and showed the email I'd sent to the board 5 minutes before taking the stage. The full Gene Tech report, the video evidence, everything. The board has all the documentation, I announced. So does the Hartford Business Journal, as of I checked my phone 30 seconds ago. Marcus lunged toward me, but security intercepted him. The same security Robert had threatened to use on me. You destroyed everything. Marcus screamed as they held him back. You vindictive, I didn't destroy anything, I said calmly. I just told the truth. The DNA test was your father's idea, remember? Robert grabbed the microphone, his hands shaking. This changes nothing. I'm still the CEO. I'm still the majority shareholder. Actually, Patricia Hayes announced, having just finished a hushed phone call. The board has voted. 7-2. You're temporarily suspended, pending a full investigation into potential fraud regarding the misrepresentation of company leadership succession. You can't. We can, and we did, Patricia continued. You've been grooming someone with no legitimate claim to the company while overlooking your actual heir. Our shareholders could sue us into oblivion. Robert turned to my mother, who still sat frozen at the VIP table. Margaret, tell them this is a mistake. Tell them. She stood slowly, her voice barely audible, even with the microphone. It's true. All of it. Thomas and I. It was just once. I'm so sorry. The room exploded again. Thomas Crawford was surrounded by people asking questions. Marcus had to be physically restrained from charging at Crawford, screaming, "You knew. You had to have known. The lawyers will sort this out," Robert said desperately. "The will can be contested." With what grounds? I asked. You specified biological son. You insisted on DNA tests. You created this situation entirely on your own. I turned to address the room one final time. For 20 years, this man told me I was worthless, that I didn't deserve the Mitchell name. He built his golden boy up on a foundation of lies while tearing me down with what he thought was the truth. But the real truth is poetic justice. Security began escorting Marcus out as he continued shouting threats and profanities. Robert stood alone on the stage, his empire crumbling around him, finally understanding what it felt like to be the one who didn't belong. The emergency board meeting convened in the hotel's conference room at 10 p.m. I wasn't supposed to be there, but Patricia Hayes insisted I attend as the only legitimate Mitchell heir present. The vote was swift and decisive. Robert was removed as CEO, effective immediately. Marcus's position as vice president was terminated with a 2-week standard severance, the minimum required by law. "We need stable leadership," Patricia announced. "Someone who understands the company and has proven competence." The board unanimously appointed Caroline Mitchell as interim CEO. "I hadn't expected that. I'm not sure I'm ready." "You built the system that saved us $2 million, board member William Chin interrupted. "You have an engineering degree and 15 years of corporate experience. You're more qualified than Marcus ever was." James Morrison had already drawn up the emergency paperwork. Based on the DNA results and the will's specific language, the 85% controlling interest transfers to you immediately. The remaining 15% stays with Robert until the divorce proceedings determine otherwise. Within 48 hours, I would control $38 million in assets. Robert, who had been silent during the proceedings, finally spoke. "You planned this. You orchestrated everything." "No," I said simply. "You did. I just took the test you demanded. The truth did the rest." As we signed the papers, Patricia pulled me aside. "Your father built something impressive here, but he let his ego poison it. Don't make the same mistake." "I won't," I assured her. "I'm not interested in dynasties or golden children. I just want to run a good company." Security briefed me on the building's access codes. Robert's had already been deactivated. Tomorrow morning, I would walk into Mitchell and Associates, not as the disappointment daughter, but as the owner. The reversal was complete. By morning, the story had gone viral. Mitchell dynasty crumbles. DNA test reveals shocking family secret ran as the Hartford Business Journal's lead story. Someone had leaked the video of my presentation. Within 48 hours, it had 2.3 million views and climbing. The comment sections were brutal, but mostly aimed at Robert. Poetic justice at its finest. He literally asked for this. Imagine being so arrogant you destroy your own legacy with a DNA test. Robert's LinkedIn profile hemorrhaged followers, 15,000 lost in a week. Marcus's professional reputation was destroyed overnight. Screenshots of his past posts bragging about being the heir apparent became memes. The business impact was immediate and measurable. 3 major clients who'd been considering leaving due to Marcus's incompetence renewed their contracts when they heard about the leadership change. Stock value increased 8% in the first week under my leadership. I gave one interview to the Hartford Business Journal, keeping it professional. This company was built on hard work and innovation. We're returning to those values. The drama is over. Now we focus on business. But the media wouldn't let it go. The DNA test that destroyed a dynasty became a trending topic. Reddit threads dissected every angle. Someone even started a podcast about family business scandals with our story as the inaugural episode. Thomas Crawford released a statement through his lawyer. "I was unaware of Marcus's parentage until the DNA results were revealed. I am willing to take responsibility and want to establish a relationship with my son if he is willing." Marcus's response, posted on Instagram before his account went private, "I don't need any of you. I'll build my own empire." The empire he'd been handed was gone. The empire he'd built himself remained to be seen. My mother finally told the whole truth during our first conversation after the gala. We met at a coffee shop, neutral ground, away from the ruins of the Mitchell estate. "Your father was never home," she said, staring into her latte. "The Chicago project, then Denver, then Houston." Thomas was kind. He listened. One night, after a company dinner where Robert had called to cancel again, it just happened. "Did Crawford know?" "I think he suspected when Marcus was born 6 weeks early, but fully developed. He never said anything. Robert never questioned it. Marcus looked enough like him. Everyone said so." The divorce was swift and brutal. Connecticut's adultery laws meant my mother forfeited significant assets. She walked away with $12 million less than she would have received otherwise. Robert lost the house, half his remaining assets, and every shred of his reputation. Marcus filed a lawsuit for intentional infliction of emotional distress against me, claiming I deliberately destroyed his life. The judge dismissed it in 5 minutes. The plaintiff's father initiated the DNA testing. The defendant simply revealed the results. Case dismissed. Marcus refused Crawford's attempts at contact. He also refused the entry-level position Crawford offered at his investment firm, the only job anyone would offer him. Last I heard, he was living in a studio apartment in Stamford, selling insurance. "I'm sorry," my mother said during that coffee meeting. "For everything. For not protecting you. For letting my guilt keep me silent while Robert hurt you." "I know," I said. And I did know. But knowing and forgiving were different things. Can we try to rebuild something?" "Maybe," I told her. "But not now. I need time to figure out who I am when I'm not the family disappointment." Mitchell and Associates, under my leadership, became what it should have always been, a meritocracy. I hired a new executive team based solely on competence, not connections. Half were women. A third were people of color. All were brilliant at their jobs. The inventory management system I developed was finally implemented properly, saving the projected $2 million annually. But more importantly, I instituted transparent attribution. Everyone's contributions were documented and credited. First quarter 2025 results spoke for themselves. Profits up 23%. Employee satisfaction up 45%. And 3 major contracts secured that Robert had lost due to Marcus's bungling. The Hartford Business Journal ran a follow-up piece, From DNA Drama to Corporate Success, Caroline Mitchell's Transformation of Mitchell and Associates. I promoted Janet Rodriguez, who'd been Marcus's assistant and had actually done all his work, to Vice President of Operations. "You've been doing the job for 5 years," I told her. "It's time you got the title and salary." The company culture shifted dramatically. The fear-based hierarchy Robert had cultivated was replaced with collaborative innovation. People stopped whispering in corridors and started speaking up in meetings. One of our biggest wins came from landing the Riverside Development Project, a $30 million contract Robert had been chasing for 3 years. The client told me directly, "We were waiting for the leadership to change. We knew Marcus would ruin it, but we also knew you were the one really running things behind the scenes." During a company town hall, an employee asked how it felt to go from the shadows to the spotlight, like finally being able to breathe. I answered, "Honestly, this company was built on one man's ego. Now it's built on everyone's talent. That's why we're succeeding." The Mitchell name stayed on the building, but it meant something different now. Robert's attempts to reclaim his life ranged from pathetic to desperate. The email started 2 weeks after the gala. "Caroline, I realize I was wrong. You're the best daughter a father could ask for. Please, let's talk. Then, I built this company from nothing. You can't just erase me. Finally, I'm your father. That has to count for something." He tried entering the building one morning, but security turned him away. The footage of him arguing with the guards, insisting he owned the company, somehow made it onto social media. Another humiliation in his growing collection. He hired 3 different law firms to challenge the will and the DNA results. Each case was dismissed. Morrison, his own lawyer for 20 years, testified that the will's language was clear and unambiguous, and that Robert had insisted on the biological son clause himself. The most pathetic attempt came when he showed up at a client dinner I was hosting. "My daughter's doing a wonderful job with my company," he announced to the table, trying to insert himself into the conversation. "Sir, this is a private event," security informed him. "I'm her father. You're not on the list now." He lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Fairfield, a 45-minute drive from the estate he'd once ruled. His LinkedIn profile listed him as consultant, with no company attached. His posts about resilience and rising from setbacks got fewer likes each time. Marcus had cut him off completely. My mother was gone. His business associates avoided him. The man who'd built his identity on legacy and blood had lost both. "I gave you everything," he wrote in his last email to me. I didn't respond. We both knew the truth. He'd given me nothing but pain. And in trying to prove I was nothing, he'd proven I was everything. 3 months after the gala, I agreed to meet Robert once a month. Lunch in a public place, with clear boundaries. These are my terms, I told him at that first meeting. You don't get to comment on my decisions. You don't get to take credit for my success. You don't get to pretend the past 20 years didn't happen. If you can't handle that, we don't meet at all. He'd aged 5 years in those 3 months. His hair completely gray now. His swagger replaced with a slight stoop. I understand, he mumbled. Marcus was a different story. After sending threatening messages, including, "You'll pay for this," and "I'll destroy you like you destroyed me," I filed a restraining order. He was blocked on everything, legally prohibited from contacting me. My mother got limited contact, with conditions. I helped her find a therapist who specialized in family trauma and secret keeping. She was working through 35 years of guilt. And I was working through 20 years of neglect. Forgiveness isn't a right, my therapist told me. It's a gift, and you get to decide if and when to give it. I established the Caroline Mitchell Foundation for Women in STEM, funded with $5 million from my inheritance. Every scholarship recipient would know they were supported by someone who understood what it felt like to be overlooked and underestimated. Why are you helping him? Patricia Hayes asked about my monthly lunches with Robert. I'm not helping him, I clarified. I'm choosing to be the person I want to be, regardless of who he was. But trust, those have to be earned from zero. And he's still in the negative. The boundaries were clear, firm, and non-negotiable. For the first time in my life, I was in control of my relationship with my family. The external success was measurable. CEO of a $45 million company, respected in the industry, featured in Forbes 40 Under 40. But the internal transformation mattered more. I started therapy the week after the gala, working through 2 decades of gaslighting and emotional abuse. You were the family scapegoat, my therapist explained. Everything wrong was your fault. Everything right was someone else's achievement. That's not normal, and it's not okay. For the first time, I stopped apologizing for existing. I stopped prefacing my ideas with "this might be stupid, but..." I stopped shrinking myself to make others comfortable. I met Daniel at a charity fundraiser. He ran a nonprofit for youth coding education. He knew my story, everyone did. But he was interested in who I was now, not my family drama. "You're brilliant," he said on our 3rd date. And I'm not talking about the company or the money. You see solutions where others see problems. The Caroline Mitchell Foundation launched with 30 scholarships in its first year. Each recipient got not just money, but mentorship. I personally met with every single one. They told me I wasn't smart enough for engineering, one recipient, Maria, told me. My family said I should study something more suitable for women. Mine said I was a mistake, I shared. Now I run a $45 million company. Don't let anyone else define your worth. The nightmares stopped after 6 months. The anxiety attacks after 8. The constant need for validation after 10. One morning, I woke up and realized I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of judgment, not of failure, not of being found out as not good enough. I was Caroline Mitchell, CEO, philanthropist, survivor. And for the first time in 38 years, that was exactly who I wanted to be. Standing in my CEO office 1 year later, I looked at the old family photo on my desk, not with bitterness, but with understanding. That scared, diminished girl in the corner of the frame had no idea what she was capable of. The DNA test that was meant to humiliate me had instead freed me. It proved that blood doesn't define family, but it can expose the lies we build our lives on. Robert had been so certain I wasn't his that he'd projected that doubt onto me for 20 years, while never questioning the son who actually wasn't his. "Your father gave you a gift," my therapist had said. Not intentionally, but he did. He showed you exactly who he was, publicly, undeniably. No more gaslighting, no more doubt. The truth set you free. The truth also taught me that when toxic people hand you a weapon, thinking it will destroy you, they often don't realize they're handing you the key to your freedom. Robert's cruelty became my catalyst. His DNA test became my evidence. His public humiliation became my public vindication. But the most important lesson? Justice isn't revenge. It's finally getting what you always deserved. I didn't destroy Robert. He destroyed himself with his own arrogance. I just refused to keep his secrets anymore. Thank you for the DNA kit, Dad, I said to the photo, then placed it in my desk drawer. It was the best investment you ever made in me. The Mitchell empire Robert built on blood and favoritism was gone. In its place stood something stronger, a company built on merit, a leader who earned her position, and a woman who finally knew her worth. The mistake had become the only true Mitchell, and that was the greatest irony of all. So, tell me, if you were in my shoes, faced with that kind of public humiliation and a hidden truth, what would you have done next? How would you have handled that moment on stage? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.